It's 12 o'clock. We will now call our meeting to order. Let our records show that we have an agenda. We have a forum. We'll start with the national flag. Please allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Under consent agenda, we have two items. One item is our minutes from our prior meeting. We also have a budget amendment item that I believe we have to approve a budget amendment. So what we need to do is pull that item out from the consent agenda and make it its own separate item to vote on. So first we'll vote for the minutes in the consent agenda only, and then pull the other item out because we have to discuss it. Can I have a motion to accept the previous minutes? Have a motion by Dr. Swain. Second. A second by, who's going to take the second? All in favor, vote by sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, we're going to have a separate agenda item to discuss the budget amendments. So at this time, whoever is responsible, whoever wants to do the discussion.
I will. We received some additional Title I and II funds, and we just need to accept additional funds.
I make a motion that we accept this money.
I second it.
Motion is second. All in favor? Sign of aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried.
I have a comment there. I wasn't here last week or last time. I was 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago. But I just want to recognize the team that dealing with PeopleSoft and making that audit. Because you know, we learned that was one of our primary problems last year. And I know the amount of work that went into that. And going forward, it should be better because PeopleSoft's a good place. The old system's gone. We're not having these two systems, blah, 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 blah. But that was a Herculean task. And so I just, for the record, wanted to say that that is greatly appreciated. FYI.
Okay, thanks. That's a continuation of our budget. That's our only item we have to vote on. So next is our superintendent's report.
Any other budget updates, Mr. Parkerson?
No, I think that what Christian has compiled, basically, our revenue is probably $70,000 less than what, $7,000 less than expenditures at this point, which is expected. So we start out heavy on expenditures, but as money comes in, we start going to the plus. We're still looking at $300,000 to do it.
Any questions about the budget? The next item is benchmark data. And so at this time, we're going to review our January benchmark data. I'm going to turn that over to Jacqueline, but before I do, basically what we did is we gave all of our students the release STAR test, except for in math, we did make some revisions to make sure that the test that we gave our students was aligned with the new TEAC. So all of our students took a full release test, and we mirrored it to know that it was in the same order that they're going to face in later on in the school year. So we're wanted it to be as closely aligned with the upcoming STAR exam. And so at this time, I want to turn it over to Jacqueline to go over the results with you. I do want to say her and her team have spent countless hours developing graphs and charts working with teachers. They have already sat down with the campus director and reviewed the data in detail with them. They have already sat down with teachers and sat individually, sat down as a staff collaboratively to look at the data, and interventions are in place to support the students in the areas that we've identified the concerns. So, Jacqueline, at this time.
What you have in front of you is updated from what I believe Joanne emailed you at the beginning of the week. If you received drafts at the beginning of the week and reviewed those did not include the writing data. The writing benchmark is comprised of 2 sections. All we had at the beginning of the week was the revising and editing section. So since then, we have had an outside grader for the stage score our compositions, as well as the teacher score the composition, and use those 2 scores to come up with the rest of the writing percentages. So that's why you now see writing in here, and those were compiled late last night. So you have updated ones in front of you today. The first graph I wanted to look at to begin with was just the district data. And what I did on this graph is I just took our math, reading, and science data from last year's benchmark, which was given in February, last year's STAR results, and then this year's benchmark that was just given in January, just so you can see the comparison. And I had seen the numbers on paper, but when I put it on this graph, it really was exciting to me to see that in most areas we're already where we were last year in April, and this is January, and we've only covered half of our curriculum. Because the test again was in January, so we only covered the first 2 quarters of the year.
So when the kids take the test, they've not had some material.
About half of the tests that have in math and science. Now in reading, they've had the majority of those tests, just because reading is so spiraled throughout the year. But in math and science, they really haven't had about half of the curriculum. We're already scoring almost where we were last year. So that was pretty exciting.
Looks like in reading we actually scored higher than we did on so this test that the students took in January, the data shows that the students have scored higher on this test than they did on the actual STAR test in
and again, this is
last year.
district data, so this is all 3 campuses, all grade levels combined for math and then for reading and for the technical and science on the campuses. So that's that first page.
And this is what our accountability rating is based on district data, not individual schools. Just so
Science, huge gains as well.
What, then the 0 to 90 here is
percent passing.
What you're looking at is the percentage of our kids that passed in the state passing standard.
So last February, when we gave that benchmark, only 35% of the kids passed the math test. And then when they actually took the test, that number went up to 58%, which is what we scored on the STAR last year.
But to be out from under, what did the state want us to do?
We passed academically last year. We failed financially.
Okay, all right.
So if the district passes, you can have a school that underperforms. Not that we ever want that.
Right.
By the way, when we had our workshop, we had some incorrect information from that workshop that DEA cleared up for. So the accountability is based only on the district.
The strikes, and we discussed this in the last meeting. So basically, as a strike, we talked about the 3 strikes.
Mm-hmm.
We currently do have the 2 strikes, but what we learned is that the strike that we obtained last year was because of finance, because of the audit.
It was for the first year.
And it was for the first year, but it counts the second year. So, in that the strike, when you look at accountability, to get a strike regarding academic performance, it is tied directly to the district as a whole, not just separate campuses. So you remember the information we got that if any campus of our campuses, Tyler, Longview, or Palestine, or the district, did not meet the state standards, we'd be considered getting a strike. And that's not true. We sat down with TA and they explained it. No, it is a cumulative score. It's a district score to get a strike. And so this is the district data, although that she has provided you and broken it down as well.
All right. Thank you. Sorry.
But the bottom line is we're eons ahead of where we were at this time last year.
Because the blue bar was actually the middle of last February. bring more until January this year. The second page, I broke down by, I don't know what y'all's order is, so.
They have
It is the same.
But I don't,
2 graphs.
yes, that's it. Okay, so this I broke down, it's the same data, I just switched the X and Y axis on here, so you can have 2 different views on it. That top graph is comparing campuses, so you can see how Tyler performed on all 5 subjects, how long he performed, and how Palestine performed. On the bottom, you've got all 5 subjects, and then broken down by how each campus did on. Again, same information, just 2 different views of that information.
And you can see that you can't see, but you can assume the extra resources we put along the way are staying on.
Yes. Pretty good, except for social studies, we are concerned about social studies.
But we hired a new person.
That's the assignment where we lost a teacher. So,
Yes.
you know, we were expecting that going into the testing, that would be an area that would be probably lower. I would probably have been concerned if social studies would have been very high in that area. I mean,
Yeah.
the truth of it is, it would have probably been something that I would have went, wait a minute, I'm not sure how aligned this data is, because, so I think it, yeah.
The third page is broken down for these by subgroups. Our subgroups that always come first are obviously our economically disadvantaged students, and then this year we do district-wide have enough Hispanic students to count as a subgroup for the district. Tyler has enough Hispanics to count as a campus. The other 2 do not, but when you put them all together, we do have enough for the district. So this last page is each campus for all 5 subjects. The blue is how all of our students performed in that subject. The red is how our ACB performed, and then that green is how our Hispanics performed. And I just provided you this to show you we are watching those subgroups very closely. Joanne mentioned to you how we've already sat down with the teachers as a staff and then the teachers as individuals. So as of now, every single teacher has a spreadsheet of their student scores from last year, how they're performing right now on the benchmark, and has identified kid by kid who the ECD kids are, who the Hispanic kids are, but more than that, they've identified the growth that those students are making, because if you remember, Index 2 is based on student progress, so we've gotten it down to each kid, what that student needs to make, or around about what that student needs to make in order to meet growth this year in every subject. We've gone even farther and identified all of the kids that are already performing at a final 3 recommended. That's what gets us points in Index 4. Plus those kids that we think we can push even more to get to that final 3 recommended standard to get more points in Index 4. And again, we've got that spreadsheet every teacher does, and we've now made plans kid by kid for in the mornings, for enrichment, and then for the afternoons for interventions. So you have district data here, large numbers here that is just looking at a broad scale, but I want you to know every teacher has broken it down kid by kid at this point, and you're making interventions based on the kid level. So,
And keep in mind this year that the Index 1 cut score goes up. So
Going to be 60%. They're predicting it's going to be 60. So that means an overall score. So they'll take all the tests on the campus and they'll do an average of those tests to get that Index 1.
it looks like we're good in 1 and 4. So 2 and 3 are ones we really got to Index 2, the economically disadvantaged. And the
Progress measures.
We just got to make sure. The main thing is we can't, high kids can't go down. And then we have kids, even if a kid can pass Index 2, even if they're not able to pass Index 1. Does that make sense? So if they came to us 3 years behind in reading,
Yes.
there is an improvement. We got to make sure every kid maximizes their progress.
And based on these gains, you can assume that kids are making progress. But I do appreciate that Jacqueline and her team have sat and looked at every single student with the teachers to say, is this child scoring at the final level 3? That means that they're at that higher level. That if they stay at that higher level, then you automatically get the 2 points for that child. Even if they go down or up a little bit, they stay within that range. So that's what's important as well. Does anybody have any questions regarding the data that's been presented?
Well, I just want to also echo that they have done, and the teachers have done phenomenal work this year, making sure not only that we continue with PBL, but that we're actually covering the stuff that's tested as well as the other stuff. So having a scope and sequence this year has made a huge difference. So, I mean, you might mention Paramore's comment.
Basically, Dr. Charlotte Paramore is our PSP assigned to us, and she's on the campus doing observations. And one of the things that she keeps bringing up is that she definitely has just seen an increase in rigor in the classroom, structure, student engagement. She's also mentioned the fact that she sees kids writing across the curriculum in all content areas. So a lot of positive things coming from an outside person looking in, because, you know, we can sit and tell her these things, but she actually has to do the observations and see them. You know, I think, again, just to say, to speak to what Dr. Odell was talking about, I think this has a direct alignment with you have a curriculum in place that's aligned with the scope and sequence. Teachers are understanding their standards. There's assessments built into that are aligned with that scope and sequence. This is just our benchmark data. We also have our curriculum checkpoints along the way where we give small assessments that are directly aligned with the 3 or 4 standards that are taught. So we'll have a curriculum district assessment, is that what we call them, common district assessment, and that'll be given in March. So that's aligned with just what's taught. So along the way throughout the year, we have given small assessments to assess the content that's been taught. This is assessment that is basically the state is saying when the child completes 3rd grade, they should know all of this material. And we're halfway through the year, and we have students already scoring at a very high range. So I'm very pleased. I was very pleased with Longview, especially since we've put so many resources there, and that you hope, you know, you're mindful to say, I'm giving you these resources, I'm investing additional support, and you want to see some growth there. And when you do, it's exciting. And we're following up with the students that are struggling. We continue to support those parents and students. In fact, when I left the Tyler campus just then, the director was working with a set of parents, talking with them. So very exciting.
And I will say, you know, you can kind of don't overanalyze and stuff, but the higher those reading scores are, the higher all the other scores are. You know, the math test is really, it's a math test, but it's a reading test. And so, as you can see in Tyler, we have a little bit lower reading scores, or for all scores are lower, but we've had a spike behind reading in Tyler. So this sort of bubble moving through the system, but we're still focusing on that.
We talked about maybe even looking at some type of reading support program this summer, identifying those kids that we know right now that are in our system that are struggling and that are behind in reading, which we already have those numbers. We have a new system, iStation, where every student was assessed. We have their reading level. We can tell that if they're above or below, and we actually did a midpoint on them. So we assess them at the beginning of the year, we assess them at the middle of the year. So we basically have a good understanding if this child is reading on grade level or not. And so what we talked about looking at is at the end of the year, looking at trying to create some type of support for those students during the summer that might help increase their reading level. Kind of a camp for those students.
And then you picked up the composition score. You want to mention the comment that was made?
Yeah, particularly in Longview, they said that whoever was teaching a 4th grade writing in Longview was writing well. She graded those same tests last year, and that she said the 7th and 8th grade was really strong.
But I think that goes to we're writing across the curriculum, whereas last year we really, kids wrote in just isolation, and especially they started writing there at that big push when we started realizing our scores were a lot lower. Now we've been, kids have been writing since the very beginning of school. And
I think it's good to mention too, Jackson has a staff of people that really work hard. every time I look at it, they're banging together, what can we do to enhance our curriculum? So I'm really pleased with our staff.
And she has 2 content coaches, that Betsy McClinda supports us, all our teachers in math, and Jennifer Raspberry supports teachers in reading and language arts. They're on the campuses all week long on every campus. They have a schedule. And then in the afternoons, they're working with the teachers to provide them that coaching support. So a lot of growth in all of our areas. We're continuing to fine tune things. Nothing's perfect. I mean, as we look at our scope and sequence, we move, we look to say maybe next year we need to move this here or there. But when we look at our assessments, we're starting to, look and trying to fine tune those. But, overall to see this amount of growth, and that's just what, our PSP said. She is just amazed that we've seen this amount of growth in a short period of time from where we sat last year.
The last chart you have in front of you too, I think it was last week, Dr. Lamb was curious about our 21st century skills. So I put this together for the district level. I collected data from each campus in the 5 areas that we rate our 21st century skills on for all grade levels. And you can see where, now these are graded by the teachers throughout the project. So we rate these 5 areas, and you can see where our kids are performing right now. And then the number of presentations every campus has done so far in every grade level is 4. So that's what this data is going for.
Thank you. I mean, I'm excited. We're getting where we need to be.
This gave us very good feedback. We now know exactly where to fine tune, where we need to focus our attention, what grade levels on which campuses. We have a different plan, like I said, for each teacher and each kid.
And really each campus, we've talked about how that when we met with the directors, we said, we're speaking to you and to your campus needs. And we're here to look at resources that will support Cal's team. And those resources are different than what we provided Tyler and Longview. So, real excited about the growth. Like I said, this is exciting. And parents were also, made aware of some of the student scores and things, and a lot of parents are very pleased.
But that said, I think as board members, especially in the constituencies, we've all had the philosophical discussions about testing and what it means, et cetera, et cetera. It is the big hammer out there. But there's still a good number of parents, and I understand where they're coming from, but if we could get them to help us get their kids on board that these tests really are important, we take it, that, if you finish a 4-hour test in 20 minutes, odds are maybe you're a genius, but just, it is important if that parent communicates that to the kid, that when they take the test, take time, that would be very helpful. It's not a large number, but I think parents would have influence, with their child on that.
And we really watched students as they tested this round, and this was the time that you can coach a child. And so you can't wait till the day of STAR and coach a student. So the directors and the teachers monitored the students individually. And if they saw a student was rushing through the test, then they could take the opportunity to pull that student aside. The director could talk to them about pacing themselves and the importance of reading through and double checking and things like that. And so those things did take place on the campus. In fact, several parents were also contacted. If the child just was basically refusing to, take the test, we followed up with the parent to say, what can we do to make your child and realize how important this is, and let's work together on this. So I was real pleased with the feedback that I got. But overall, from the administrators that visited the campus, told me that they saw the kids working hard. Most of the kids did utilize the 3.5 to 4 hours to take the exam. So those are always good things to know, that kids are taking the exam seriously. So
how much feedback is going back to the parents? She says some of them have been contacted
Well, I think it's done individually. The teachers, and I should have noted that before, but it's my understanding are the teachers not contacting the parents to give them the benchmark results on an individual basis. So right now I know that they followed up directly with the kids that they're serving in intervention, because those are kids that we have to say, we need you to stay starting tomorrow, so I know that communication has taken place. I don't think a particular form has gone out to say your child scored this on the test. We're hesitant to do that because all the material hasn't been covered. So if a parent sees that their child has made a 50 on the test, well, they just think, okay, my child's failing the test. Well, no. When we look and we break it down even further, we've even looked at what has been taught and what has been what has not been covered. So we've looked at the content of what has actually been taught and took a percentage from that, and then actually took a percentage from the material that has not been covered at this time. And that was also exciting to see. You know, we definitely didn't want to see that the kids, what had been taught, the kids make a 30 on. You know,
But I would, if the teacher should communicate to the parent that, like, for example, in algebra, the pass score is what? 37%. That's terrible, but so a kid that scores 51 did really well. Okay.
So that's why we're hesitant to.
But a fourth grader has to pass at a higher percentage of the test than a eighth grader.
Yes.
Over time, and I don't know the reasons. I'm not going to try to guess, but the state has figured out whatever that means. So, but I agree. You don't want to freak parents out and say, my kid scored a 37 on the algebra. That's actually a good score on the algebra test, the way it's constructed by an external testing company. And so, now I love to score like I would. But so however you do that, it may help if the teachers can provide what the cut score was, so they understand that in some cases a 40 is a really good score.
Speaking of grades, we did get good feedback from parents that sent us individual emails or saw us in the pickup line about the report cards. That they appreciated the fact that we were giving out report cards and that they felt good about that, and they were able to kind of get a solid grade of this is how my child performed for the 6 weeks, this is how they performed for the semester. If they did have any concerns in certain content areas, they could follow up with a teacher, because now they know exactly how their child is performing based off of a grade. So a lot of good feedback from parents regarding that.
Tuesday.
And that'd be something that basically we looked at. If the 6 weeks ends on a Friday, the progress reports will go home on a Tuesday, and then at when the 6 weeks, at the end of the 6 weeks, report cards go home that Friday. So we pretty consistent. Tuesday will be progress reports. Friday will be report cards.
I think I can speak for the Housing campus that the teachers did a good job explaining the cut score to the students. Yeah, I have 5 kids in the back of my car talking, but they understood what I made a 52. A 52, yeah, but passing was a whatever. It was like, okay, good. So, I mean, they understood that, that they know, there wasn't.
So where we have kids moving up and taking more advanced classes, like we have 7th grade students taking algebra, when they take the test, do they take the algebra test?
Yes.
Yes.
They don't take the 7th grade test?
Correct.
So the unintended consequence we learned of that is that when you move a kid up, they have to show, if they're 7th grader, they're going to show that much more growth in the next 2. So when a kid gets moved up, you kind of get punished in the district. So an 8th grader who goes into algebra, so 9th grade, they have to show progress not only for 8th grade, but for 9th grade. So 2 years of progress. Yeah. So although that 37 for all the kids in algebra is the cut score, most of our kids have to make a 50, about a 51 to also meet growth. And you would think that the fact that an 8th grader was able to pass the algebra test would be awesome, and they kind of punish you for that. So in Palestine, we're doing the experiment where almost all the kids are in algebra. we're looking at that very carefully. Because if you get enough growth from, you know, averages out, that's okay. But same time, we don't want to get a bad index 2 score. It is the most crazy system.
Okay, any other questions regarding the benchmark data? Again, Jacqueline, thank you to you and your team. Things were presented well, and we look forward to the results that we're going to get on the STAR. Curriculum updates, we pretty much covered that, just to talk about the things. I think I've said pretty much everything. We've spent a lot of time in the since we last met looking at benchmark data, looking at content, looking at resources, fine-tuning some things here and there, working with the directors. We're really excited about the progress we've made, especially in the amount of time. Progress across the board. When you look at everything, you know, I speak just to the administrative team over here with operations. They have, you know, they spend all their day looking at laws and submitting reports to TEA. You know, there's so much progress that's been made from every area, from, like I said, the operational standpoint to the curriculum, to communication with parents, putting in those systems in place. So I'm really pleased overall with the progress the district's made. So does anybody have any questions?
I have an announcement.
Okay.
This is just so it's on television or whatever we do. The next visit to Waxahachie Global High School, which is going to be a similar type of school, will be February 18th. We had 10 parents come yesterday, and one of them did a bunch of tweets on the Global High School site about how excited they were. And I think you'll see the parallels. There are some differences between the schools because they have some other things they do that we wouldn't be able to do. We have things we can do they can't do. But I would encourage more parents to come to that February 18th because I think it would really open their eyes to what Texas STEM Academy is supposed to look like. And one that's kind of similar population that our 3 communities have.
I have a motion to adjourn.
I make that
I have a motion to adjourn. Second?
Awesome.
Second.
It's a record. It's a record. 34 minutes.
The meeting is adjourned.
You okay? You okay, Zach? There you go. Got the food?
No, I'm sorry.
That's a good time.